got very lucky with our neighbors. Our neighbors are super cool, and we're very close with them. They all have real jobs. They went to college and stuff. And one of them is a management consultant, so he manages all the consultants. And yeah, it's a tough job, all right? There's a lot of consultants, and he's like, you better get back, you can't consult up in here. So he's busy. Our other neighbor's an actuary. I thought that was with birds. I was like, what's that bird right there? He goes, I don't know. And I was like, as an actuary, you don't know what that bird is right there?
Good morning. It's Thursday, Jordan Peterson Thursday, February the 5th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Jordan Peterson. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Maria, then Stu.
Silver down 10%. Of course, these metals have had a great year to date. They have outperformed stocks year to date, with gold up 10%. Silver now is negative year to date. We are watching metals certainly on the move this morning. President Trump is right now speaking at the 74th National Prayer Breakfast in Washington this morning. We're going to be covering that. And I'll just point out that lawmakers are racing to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Many senators are going to the Munich Security Conference next week, so maybe we get a resolution on Thursday next week as opposed to Friday, the deadline, the 13th, to come up with the funding for DHS. That'll do it for us. I will see you again tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
All right. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Yep, the sell-off continues. This is clearly a risk-off market. Just about everything is down. Let's start with Bitcoin. It has dropped below $70,000 a coin. Right now, you're at 69.5. No surprise. Strategy, which is the largest private Bitcoin holder, is now underwater on its holdings, and that stock is down nearly 7%. Another near 7%. Gold, that's down. Looks like it could touch, no, it's well below $5,000 an ounce, but we're at $48.54 at the moment, down about $100. Silver, I'm looking at $78 an ounce, gone down to $75 an ounce. As for stocks, they're lower across the board, continuing the weak selling. We have the Dow off 180, S&P down 45, the Nasdaq's down 200 points, that's 0.85%. There is no joy for Google. Despite reporting strong earnings, what is hurting the stock is they're spending $185 billion on capital expenditures, CapEx. Investors worried about the sheer size of the spend. The stock's down 5.25%. Interest rates, I'll say firm. The 10-year yield's above, actually just below 4.25%. The yield is dropping a fraction to 4.23. The 2-year around 3.5%, 3.51. Oil, $63 a barrel. And we have gas actually on the upside a little bit. You're now looking at regular averaging 2.89. On the show today, following talks in Abu Dhabi, Russia and Ukraine have agreed on a prisoner exchange, 314 prisoners involved, but no further progress towards peace announced so far. The president says Iran's leaders should be very worried, his words. The U.S. Navy shot down an Iranian drone earlier this week. President Trump didn't like that. More talks scheduled for tomorrow. We're taking a look at the situation in Minneapolis. The president wants a softer touch. Tom Homan will change ISIS street tactics. Trump is feeling the political pressure. He's offering a deal. And we're focusing on Bernie Sanders. He spent $550,000 on private jets during his 2025 campaign. You can call that climate hypocrisy if you like. But my point is, the socialists are making real inroads into our politics, and I don't like it. Thursday, February the 5th, 2026.
And that was Stuart Varney, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. So now this is an article called the Iran Negotiations.
The Iran negotiations. Tehran's carpet merchants have finally met their match. Iran's foreign minister and Trump envoy Steve Witkoff will sit down on Friday in Istanbul, ostensibly to negotiate. But what will be the subject of the negotiation? The Iranians clearly want the U.S. to back off the intensifying military, political, economic, and diplomatic pressure on their regime. I would be stunned if they didn't claim victory after meeting with Witkoff that the president had agreed to back down. But what does President Trump want? He has said two things, both of them intriguing, but neither one really analyzed by media commentators. First, he has said he wants an end to Iran's nuclear program. Second, that he wants the regime to stop killing its own people. Wait a minute, I thought Operation Midnight Hammer obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons facilities last June. What's up? Over the past week, satellite photographs have emerged on social media showing that the Iranians have put new roofs on buildings at Fordo, the enrichment facility that was hit by U.S. bunker buster bombs on June 22nd. The roofs may be just temporary covers, aimed primarily at keeping prying eyes and satellites from chronicling the excavation work underneath. Still, it would take many months for the Iranians to burrow down the 300 feet of rubble caused by the bombs. And once they reach the underground enrichment hall, it's unlikely they would find anything other than twisted metal. So my guess is that the apparent excavation work at Fordo is just a mirage. Instead, I believe the U.S. now has definitive intelligence that the regime succeeded in spiriting away its stockpile of highly enriched uranium shortly before the June 22nd attack on Fordo. Remember how quickly both the President and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth were to brush off questions relating to the HEU stockpile? And then how quickly the subject just seemed to vanish from the airwaves and the press briefings? The 450 kilograms of 60% HEU Iran was known to possess before the June attacks is enough to produce at least 10 nuclear weapons, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency's own assessment. That is not just a one-off bomb, but a nuclear weapons arsenal. My Iranian sources believe the regime removed it long before the June attacks and is keeping it in a convoy of nearly 24 container trucks where it can be further enriched, a kind of rolling shell game, if you will. That would make a tempting target for Pentagon war planners, who have shown remarkable expertise at spiriting away highly protected targets, including a foreign president, from very hostile environments. It would certainly explain why the regime has been putting pressure on U.S. allies in the region in recent days, with the Supreme Leader warning that any U.S. attack would spark a regional war. One IRGC pundit, speaking on Iranian television, said the regime planned to strike at the heart of Dubai's financial hub, the Dubai Airport Free Zone, the Internet Exchange Center, and the Jebel Ali Free Trade Zone. That would do tremendous damage not just physically, but to Dubai's image as a peaceful safe haven for innovative business and high-tech development. But how serious is President Trump about his second demand that the regime stop killing protesters? It's hard to know, and much more difficult to quantify. Trump claimed last month, before the full extent of the regime's slaughter of innocent protesters became known, that his threats of retaliation had stopped the execution of 800 political prisoners. But by now it's pretty clear that Trump's words have not deterred the Iranian regime, which has justified the killings by claiming the protests were the work of external plots. In a letter reportedly signed by the president to an Iranian-American family in California whose nephew was killed by the regime during protests on January 10th, the president said that his administration will always stand with the people of Iran in their demand for freedom and democracy. He added, "We are working with great determination to ensure that the Ayatollah and his criminal regime are brought to justice." Those are serious words that go well beyond official statements so far. Retired Israeli Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of the nonprofit Israel's Defense and Security Forum, said this week it was time for the president to put up or shut up. This operation is not a limited strike on military or nuclear facilities. We are facing a highly complex attack aimed at regime change in Iran, broad and multi-layered, directly targeting the regime's leadership, he said in a video statement. According to Avivi, by striking communications centers and state broadcasting, the regime's command links with its forces across Iran would be severed. He added that all IRGC bases would be targeted and, ultimately, the public would be armed. That goes way beyond anything the Trump administration has suggested publicly. But then again, they didn't say much about capturing Nicolas Maduro, either. For all his public verbosity and bombast, this president has shown a remarkable ability to play his cards close to his vest. Tehran's carpet merchants have finally met their match. Timmerman is a senior fellow at the America First Policy Institute who was nominated for the...
And, excuse me. So that, again, was an article in the American Thinker by Kenneth R. Timmerman. The interesting thing about the article is the use of the word regime. This is a brainwash that has been successfully used by liberals over the years. They have brainwashed conservatives or erstwhile conservatives into using the term regime and to psychologically separate the government from the people of any government. And it's just simply wrong, especially in the case of Iran. In 1979, the Iranian people rose up, had a revolution. Iranian students took over the U.S. Embassy for 444 days. Okay, they created the theocracy that they live under today. They then go on running around chanting death to America, death to Israel, etc., etc. And so the idea that you can separate the people from the regime is ridiculous. It's all one thing. If we're going to war with Iran, we go to war not only with the government, we go to war with the Iranian people. We must know and understand that if the Iranian government is our enemy, so is or are the Iranian people. They're the ones that put this in place. They're the ones that kept this government going for 50 years. At no time during recent protests have I ever heard of the Iranian people saying things like, up with America, up with Israel. I've not heard any representatives, for instance, let's say the guy that wants to be the new Shah of Iran, coming out and saying, we change our minds about all the things that we said in the past about America, about Israel. We have no interest in obliterating Israel. We have no interest in obliterating America. All we want to do is live in peace. I hear none of that. And until I do, not only is the Iranian government my enemy, but so are the Iranian people. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, this is from an Instagram account called King Millennial.
So it appears the officials in Fulton County are running scared. I mean, I haven't seen this much fear-mongering since the vote or die era. Remember that? I mean, my thing is, if you have nothing to hide, why are you so angry? Why do you have to always play that victim mentality bullshit to your constituents in Fulton County? And I'm not surprised that they're saying that there was fraud that went on in those voter registration locations. I'm not surprised, because wherever black Democrats is the majority, there's going to be some skeletons in the closet. History has shown that, period. And also, you have to love how black liberals always seem to play to the emotions of black and brown people in their jurisdictions. It's like they need their blood, their energy, their fight. It's almost like witchcraft. And don't think that this energy is not being used to fuel this anti-ICE sentiment that's going on in Georgia right as we speak. Because I'm seeing tons of content creators talking about, ICE is here in this part of Clayton County. ICE is here. ICE is there in Atlanta. Oh, this ain't Minneapolis. You're right. This ain't Minneapolis. And you're right. Because law enforcement in Georgia, one thing I've noticed is that they don't play about law enforcement, period. Okay? You harm a law enforcement officer or personnel member anywhere in the state of Georgia, and it's your ass. Every agency, even the poorly ran ones, will stick together and find your ass. So don't believe the hype. And all you Ungawa Black Power motherfuckers who's out here, spreading the word about ICE, talking about y'all got this and y'all got that to stand up against, y'all ain't got shit. Y'all still can't stand up to the drug dealers in your communities. Y'all still can't stand up to the gang members in your communities. Y'all still can't stand up to the Kia boys stealing shit in your communities. So stop it. Stop it. They are not worried about your black ass. They're worried about getting criminal illegals out of this country so that your ass, with your felonies and your charges, can get a fucking job and try to pay for all your several baby mamas.
And that was King Millennial. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
What kind of settlement have you made with your life? You know, when we make settlements, out of court settlements, you've heard them. That means that you decided to take something less than what you originally wanted to get had you gone into court. And the reason that you settled outside of court is because you didn't believe that you can get it. So you made an out-of-court settlement. Many of us are making in-life settlement. We're settling for less than what we actually deserve. We don't feel good about it, but we make it work in our minds. We'll come up with some kind of excuse to make it all right. What kind of settlement have you made with your life? As much as there is a desire in us to change our lives, to achieve our goals, to manifest our greatness, there's also a stronger desire to stay right where we are. As hard as you're going to work for yourself, you're going to find yourself in conflict working against yourself. Assignments that you will be given, you will find ways to get busy and not to do them, or to become distracted, or let any kind of excuse stop you from honoring a commitment to yourself. Just watch this. Just observe yourself.
It's a lot of y'all, you get an attitude with other people when they don't show up, or they didn't do what they said they was going to do. But you let you off the hook when you do dumb stuff.
I mean, this is why none of us change, because it's easier to just keep doing what we're doing. And in order to change, at some point, yeah, you got to change your behavior and change the way you think, but you also have to look in the mirror and you got to confront what you're doing that is blocking you from having what you want in your life.
Stop calling other people haters and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm hating on me. I need you to look in the mirror and tell you, you are not going to do me like this no more. You're not going to continue to sabotage me. You're not. You're not going to keep procrastinating. You're not.
Accept the fact that it's on you. Hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody else expects of you. Never excuse yourself.
You can't hold nobody else accountable, but you can hold you accountable.
Because all of us, ladies and gentlemen, just unconsciously get on track sometimes. Sometimes we slip. Sometimes we slip in consciousness. And you have to say it to yourself all the time. Clean your act up.
Hold you accountable and don't let you off the hook. Man up, be the right person. Embrace the process. Stop procrastinating. Stop waiting to the last minute. Stop giving 80% of who you are. Man up. Give 120% everything you do. If you're an athlete, I challenge you just to give a month where you say, for 30 straight days, every practice I'm putting in 120%. When I'm tired, I'm going to keep going. You can't buy discipline. You can't buy drive. You can't buy effort either. You got skill and you got will. When you play, I don't care nothing about skill. Every single game, you can give the same effort every game, and that's 120%. This has everything to do with pride. You gotta take pride. When people say, E, you a unicorn, you a lie. I'm not a unicorn, and I'm not gonna take that foolishness from you. Because you wanna call me a unicorn so you can make me special. I'm not special.
And that was motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now some meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Jordan Peterson.
Let's talk about something most people instinctively misunderstand. The notion that being kind is always the right response. You've been told over and over again that niceness is a virtue, that turning the other cheek is noble. And in most situations among reasonable, reciprocal human beings, that's true. But here's the problem. The narcissist does not operate by the same moral or psychological framework. Your kindness to a narcissist isn't seen as a generous act. It's interpreted as a signal that you're willing to submit. And once they've picked up on that, the dynamic changes completely and irreversibly. The narcissist views relationships as a hierarchy. It's not a collaboration. It's a dominance game. They don't seek intimacy. They seek leverage. So when you're nice, when you offer them understanding, forgiveness, compassion, they think, good, I've got them trained. And this isn't paranoia, it's a hard psychological truth. Narcissism is at its core a compensatory pathology. It masks a deeply fragmented sense of self with a grandiose persona, one that requires constant external validation to survive. The narcissist feeds off that validation, and your niceness becomes the most delicious form of supply. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because your instincts as a psychologically healthy person will compel you to give benefit of the doubt, to soothe conflict, to see the best in people. But those instincts, which serve you beautifully in most of life, are weaponized in the narcissist world. They exploit the gap between your assumption of shared values and their calculated manipulation. You think you're building a bridge, they're mapping out your pressure points. This is why so many people caught in narcissistic relationships, romantic, professional, even familial, feel such intense cognitive dissonance. You keep thinking, if I'm just patient enough, kind enough, loving enough, they'll change. They'll see I'm different. But what you don't realize is that your kindness is being filed away as weakness. It emboldens them. It justifies their behavior. It teaches them that you'll tolerate more because you already have. There's a concept in behavioral psychology known as intermittent reinforcement. It's when unpredictable rewards strengthen a behavior more than consistent ones. Narcissists are masters of this. They give just enough kindness, just enough false hope to keep you engaged. And the more you pour in, the more they take. It becomes a cycle. Your niceness enables their pathology, and they will not stop because they see no reason to. Why would they when the system works in their favor? Now, some people might say, well, isn't it cruel to be anything but kind? Don't we all deserve grace? And to that I say, kindness without boundaries is not grace. It's self-betrayal. When you're nice to someone who manipulates, exploits, and gaslights you, you're not being moral, you're being complicit. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But if your goodness consistently gets you hurt, it's not goodness anymore. It's naivety, and worse, it feeds the very dysfunction you're trying to fix. There's a deeper philosophical issue here, too. At what point does compassion become cowardice? When does the refusal to confront someone's destructive behavior stop being noble and start being self-destructive? That's a question everyone entangled with a narcissist must eventually face, because niceness in that context becomes a moral bypass. You're not avoiding conflict for peace. You're avoiding it because you're afraid of being disliked, afraid of being alone, afraid of being the bad guy. And the narcissist can sense that. They smell fear like blood in the water. Important to remember, you are not obligated to be nice to someone who has made a habit of hurting you. Respect must be mutual. Empathy must be reciprocal. Otherwise, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And every time you choose niceness over truth, you extend the narcissist stage. They keep acting and you keep applauding, hoping the script will change. But it won't. Because for them, it was never about truth to begin with. It was about control. You're not here to be someone's emotional fuel. You're not here to be drained, diminished, and discarded. You are here to live a life aligned with your values, your dignity, your boundaries. And the first step is recognizing that some people will see your kindness not as a gift, but as an opportunity to dominate, deceive, and destroy. So stop being nice to a narcissist. Be honest, be firm, be willing to walk away. Because in the end, real strength is not found in how long you can endure their chaos. It's found in your ability to choose yourself over their narrative. And that, in the truest sense, is the most moral thing you can do. Now let's examine something far more subtle and more insidious. Empathy. The very trait that society quite rightly teaches us to cultivate. The capacity to see and feel what another person is experiencing. It's a cornerstone of morality. Without it, cooperation would collapse. Civilization itself would disintegrate into tribal brutality. But empathy, like any virtue, when divorced from discernment, becomes a liability. And that's what the narcissist understands in a way you don't. Most people assume that empathy is an inherently noble trait. But here's the reality. Empathy is only noble when it's exercised within the boundaries of truth and mutual responsibility. The narcissist doesn't relate to empathy as something to be valued. They see it as something to use, to wield. Your emotional attunement, your desire to soothe, to understand, to repair, is a weakness they will manipulate as easily as a puppeteer pulls strings. And they're good at it because narcissists study you, not in a conscious, reflective way, but instinctively. They observe your tells, your triggers, your guilt. They listen for phrases like, I just want peace, or maybe I was too harsh. And every time you hesitate to defend yourself in the name of keeping the peace, they take note, they log it, they build a psychological playbook specifically tailored to your vulnerability. They build a psychological playbook specifically tailored to your vulnerability. That's what makes this so profoundly damaging. You are not being exploited because you are weak in some fundamental way. Quite the opposite. You're being exploited because you care, because your emotional radar is finely tuned, and because you believe that if you can just understand the narcissist's pain, if you can just help them feel safe or seen, they'll stop hurting you. But that's the trap. Because the narcissist isn't seeking healing. They're seeking control. And your empathy is the perfect mechanism to achieve it. They tell half-truths, spin stories about how others have wronged them, and present themselves as misunderstood victims, not because they are, but because they know it will activate your compassion. And the moment they've activated that compassion, they own the frame. You're no longer evaluating their behavior critically. You're rationalizing it. You're justifying what is, in truth, deeply manipulative conduct. This is why so many survivors of narcissistic abuse feel emotionally hijacked. They start to doubt their own reality. They feel cruel for setting boundaries. They feel selfish for expressing hurt. That's not an accident. That's a result of prolonged empathy manipulation. The narcissist uses your very humanity as a tool of control. And you don't realize it until your emotional bank account is empty and you're still being told you haven't done enough. And here's the deeper issue. When your empathy overrides your judgment, you become a participant in your own exploitation. That's not to blame the victim. It's to awaken the victim to a critical truth. You are not morally obligated to understand someone who weaponizes your kindness. You do not owe patience to someone who interprets it as permission to continue violating your emotional boundaries. You see, empathy without limits leads to codependency. It keeps you locked in a cycle where your identity becomes tied to fixing someone else's chaos. That's not compassion. That's self-erasure. And the narcissist thrives in that environment because the more you disappear, the more room they have to dominate. It becomes a psychological colonization where your instincts serve their pathology. So what's the alternative? It's not to become cold or indifferent. That's another extreme. The alternative is to practice wise empathy. Empathy with accountability. Compassion that includes you in the equation. When you feel yourself being pulled into the narcissist's orbit through pity or guilt, you need to pause and ask, whose needs are being met right now? Is this emotional exchange reciprocal, or am I being played like a violin for someone else's narrative control? When you shift from blind empathy to discerning empathy, everything changes. You start to recognize that some people do not want to be understood, they want to be obeyed. And once you see that clearly, You stop trying to fix them. You stop trying to get them to see your perspective because you realize they already do. They just don't care. And that ultimately is the bitter truth. The narcissist is not confused. They're not broken in a way you can mend. They're strategic. They're performative. They've learned that your empathy is the perfect tool to keep you invested while they continue their manipulation behind a mask of victimhood. But once you reclaim your empathy and pair it with discernment, you remove their power. You stop playing the role they assigned you, and you start becoming something far more dangerous to a narcissist than an enemy. You become someone they can no longer control. Let's talk about the concept of niceness. Because contrary to what you've been taught, being nice is not synonymous with being good. In fact, niceness, particularly when it's habitual, unexamined, or rooted in fear, can be one of the most dangerous traits a person carries, especially when entangled with a narcissist. See, when you're nice to a narcissist, you're not modeling virtue. You're offering compliance. You're signaling that you're willing to abandon your own values, your own intuition, and often your own dignity in order to avoid conflict, preserve the illusion of peace, or keep the relationship intact. And the narcissist sees that, they feel it, and most importantly, they exploit it. Narcissistic individuals operate within a psychological structure that's deeply hierarchical. In their world, there are dominators and there are the dominated. There are those who serve and those who are served. Power is the game and control is the reward. Now, when you show up to that dynamic with your hands open, with your boundaries soft, with your instincts muted by the compulsion to be nice, you're not diffusing the power imbalance. You're reinforcing it. You're confirming silently but unmistakably that they're in charge and you are not. And the more you comply, the more the abuse escalates. It doesn't necessarily start with overt cruelty. Often it begins with small requests, subtle manipulations, emotional guilt trips that are disguised as emotional need. And because you're nice, because you don't want to upset them, you give in. Again and again, you tolerate the criticism, you rationalize the gaslighting, you suppress your resentment and call it patience, and all the while you believe you're keeping the peace. But in reality, you're just feeding the machine. Because the narcissist's system thrives on your silence, on your self-sacrifice, on your willingness to be the container for their chaos. And with every moment that you choose nice over truth, you disappear just a little more. Your voice, your needs, your individuality. They erode under the pressure of maintaining an illusion. And that illusion is designed to keep you in your place. And you might ask, what's wrong with being nice? Well, here's the fundamental problem. Nice people conflate kindness with avoidance. They think that if they can just keep things smooth, if they don't rock the boat, the narcissist will stop the behavior. But narcissists don't respond to smoothness. They respond to structure, to consequence. They respect, in a twisted sense of the word, the person who refuses to play the game, the one who stops accommodating dysfunction, the one who says no and means it. Niceness becomes a mask, a way to hide fear, a way to avoid the uncomfortable work of confrontation, of self-assertion, of standing in the uncomfortable truth that sometimes love alone isn't enough to fix another human being. That some people don't want to be helped. They want to dominate. And if you keep showing up with softness when what's needed is strength, you're not just enabling them, you're endorsing their behavior. What's required is not cruelty, but clarity, not aggression, but assertiveness. Boundaries are not acts of hostility. They are declarations of self-respect. And when you begin to shift from nice to honest, from passive to principled, the narcissist will often escalate their tactics because the power structure you once upheld with your niceness is beginning to collapse. And that threatens the very core of their control. It's in that moment when the mask slips, when their rage surfaces, when the manipulations intensify, that you'll be tempted to revert, to go back to being nice, to smooth it over. But understand this, that temptation is not compassion, it's conditioning. And the only way to break it is to recognize that your niceness was never keeping the peace. It was simply prolonging the war. What must replace niceness is a deeper, more courageous form of moral responsibility, the willingness to face conflict in order to uphold truth, the capacity to endure discomfort in the name of self-integrity. That's what the narcissist fears. Not your anger, but your awakening, your refusal to participate, your conscious decision to no longer bend your will to the distorted needs of someone who has built their identity on your submission. So the next time you feel that pull to be nice, to stay quiet, to smile when you want to scream, to explain yourself endlessly in the hope of being understood, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing peace or am I choosing to be controlled? Because when you stop enabling the narcissist with your niceness, when you begin to draw the line in the sand, not out of rage, but out of deep self-respect, that's when the power begins to shift. One of the most insidious myths we've absorbed is that being nice is the same as being virtuous. That if you smile, comply, and never ruffle feathers, you're doing the right thing. But that's not virtue. That's avoidance. And more often than not, what we label as nice is actually a mask, one that hides fear, codependency, and a deeply rooted discomfort with standing up for ourselves. Let's be honest. Most people who consistently act nice in the face of abuse aren't doing it because they're saints. They're doing it because they're scared. They're afraid of conflict, afraid of being disliked, afraid of what will happen if they assert themselves. And in the context of narcissistic abuse, that fear becomes the foundation of the entire dynamic. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, romantic, familial, professional, it's not just a matter of misunderstanding. It's a battle of psychological frameworks. The narcissist is driven by control and validation. You, on the other hand, might be driven by harmony, connection, and acceptance. So what happens when these forces collide? You start giving, and they keep taking. And that imbalance grows rapidly, and your niceness, your reluctance to say no, to confront, to challenge, becomes the very mechanism that allows the narcissist to dominate. But the reason this continues isn't because you're too good. It's because your sense of self is often tied to the approval of others. That's codependency. The need for external validation to regulate your internal stability. Now here's the deeper issue. Codependency isn't compassion. It's self-abandonment dressed up as loyalty. You begin to think you're being loving by staying quiet, by absorbing blame, by fixing what you didn't break, but really, you're just disappearing. Slowly, willingly. And that disappearance is not a noble sacrifice. It's a psychological escape from the responsibility of selfhood. Narcissists are experts at identifying people like this. They can sense, often unconsciously, who will make themselves small, who will carry the emotional weight, who will flinch first. And they don't admire your niceness, they exploit it. Because to them, your inability to enforce boundaries doesn't signal kindness, it signals utility. You're useful when you're compliant, disposable when you're not. So let's be clear, being agreeable in a situation that demands strength is not moral high ground. It's often a symptom of an underdeveloped sense of self, one that was likely shaped in early life, perhaps in a family where love had to be earned, where peace was maintained at the cost of personal expression. In that environment, being nice wasn't a choice. It was a survival strategy. And unfortunately, many adults carry that strategy into every subsequent relationship without realizing it no longer serves them. It traps them. That's why so many victims of narcissistic abuse feel confused. They believe they were doing everything right. They were accommodating, patient, forgiving. But instead of being met with respect or appreciation, they were met with more manipulation, more lies, more emotional violence. Why? Because what the narcissist respects, what any predator respects, is not submission. It's strength. And niceness, especially when it's compulsive, reads as weakness. To break this cycle, you don't need to become harsh or cruel. You need to become honest. Honest with yourself about why you're afraid of conflict. Honest about the emotional cost of keeping the peace. Honest about how much of your life has been spent managing someone else's reactions rather than expressing your own reality. Niceness, when it's authentic, when it's chosen, when it's paired with boundaries, that's grace. But niceness that's reactive, automatic, compulsive, that's fear. That's a strategy for not being abandoned, not being attacked, not being rejected. And that strategy, while it may have once kept you safe, is now destroying your ability to live a life rooted in integrity. So the question is not, are you being nice? The question is, are you being real? Are you showing up with truth, with courage, with the willingness to say, I will not abandon myself just to make you comfortable? Because when you stop masking your fear with niceness, when you let go of the illusion that compliance will earn you love, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim yourself, your time, your energy, your dignity. You stop being a character in someone else's story and start writing your own. And the narcissist, they'll notice, they'll push back, they'll accuse you of being selfish, cold, changed. But that's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's a sign the dynamic is breaking. That's a sign you're waking up. The truth is, your niceness was never protecting you. It was simply postponing the inevitable. And the day you choose courage over comfort, that's the day the healing begins.
And that was Jordan Peterson. And again, what makes this interesting, one of the reasons that I play Jordan Peterson every week is because if you take the word narcissist in your mind and substitute the word liberal, it becomes very, very fascinating. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.